Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya.
So we are starting the second chapter. So let us start that Dvitiya Kanda. We will chant the first mantra of the second chapter. Yadi manyase suvedeti dabhramevapi.
Yadi manyase
suvedeti dabhramevapi.
Nunam tvam vetha brahmano rupam.
Nunam vetha brahmano rupam.
Yadasya tvam yadasya deveshvathanu. Mimamsam yevate munye viditam. Okay, so just let me give you the word meanings first, and then we'll see. So just a small note that in this text which I am using, there is the first line has the word dabhrame vapi. Some texts have dhaharame vapi. So I don't know which text you are using. If you are using the PDF which I have sent, it is dabhrame vapi. If you are using some other text, it could be dhaharame vapi. They are only different words. They have the same meaning. So there is no issue there. Now the entire mantra, almost the entire mantra, until the last line, Mimamsyam eva te. They are the words spoken by the teacher. So Guru Uvacha starts from Yadi and ends up at Mimamsyam eva te. And the last two words are Shishya Uvacha, Manye Vaditam. That is what is mentioned by the student as the answer. The first one is something which the first entire, verse almost, mantra almost, the teacher is telling the student something, and in the last two words, the student replies. Okay, let's say, let's see the words first. Yadi manyase iti. So suvedeti has to be broken into suveda plus iti. So that word, that sentence becomes Yadi manyase iti suveda. Yadi manyase iti. The student is being told by the Acharya. Yadi manyase iti. If you think in this manner, which manner? Suveda. So Veda means to know. Suveda means to know very well. So Suveda. If you think in this manner that I know well. Okay, now this is the style of the Upanishad. What is it that the student thinks he knows well?
The student had asked the question that how is something which is inert by nature can show the characteristics of sentiency, and the Acharya had explained, taking the example of manaha, chakshu.
So what is the subject? Subject is Brahman.
Brahman. Yes.
Right. So when you see this sentence, Yadi manyase iti suveda, if you think you know well, the subject is not mentioned here, so you have to add over here. If the teacher is telling the student, if you think that you know Brahman well, right, then then is the important part. Tvam vetha means you know. Nunam is an expression which means indeed. So, tvam vetha nunam, you indeed know. Then it says, api eva dabhram rupam. Dabhram is small. So, dabhram rupam is small form or finite expression. So, api eva dabhram rupam. Teacher is saying, if you think that you know Brahman well, then indeed you know only the finite form of Brahman. Right? Asya Brahmanaha, that Brahman. That is eva api dabhram rupam asya Brahmanaha. You indeed know only the finite form of the Brahman, yat tvam, which Brahman, and you have to add here, which Brahman you find in human beings, and also asya yad deveshu, which Brahman also you find in the gods, in the devas. Therefore, what is the idea? The idea being said is that if you think that you know Brahman well, then actually you are knowing only the finite form of Brahman, which is available in a human being, which is available in the gods also. Full stop. And therefore he says, Athanu te, therefore that Brahman, Mimamsyam eva, you need to really ascertain. What is he saying? That if you have said, if you think that you know Brahman, then you actually know only the very finite form of Brahman, which means you really don't know Brahman at all. Atha eva mimamsyam. Therefore, you need to inquire into that Brahman once again. A very involved way of saying. Am I making sense?
Yeah. If you think that you know it well, then you don't really know it well.
Yes. Now, when you say if you think you know it well, you have to relate this to the way in which we talk about objects. So, when I say that I know this glass, then I am separate, the object is separate, the glass is separate. And therefore, Acharya is saying that if you think that you know Brahman as an object, then really speaking, you don't know Brahman at all. You have only seen the finite form. So we have to recall that in the first chapter, the teaching was that the Atma is neither a known object nor an unknown object, right? Which means it is neither a known object nor is it a knowable object. It means not an object at all. And therefore, Atma was said to be the subject. Atma is ever the knower consciousness, the pramata only, the experiencer, never the experience. And therefore, you have to go one step further. Whenever you say pramata, that word pramata can be used only in connection with prameyam, the object of knowledge. Correct? Pramata is the knower of something. And the moment you say that I am a pramata, then I am saying that I am a pramata who knows something, some prameyam, using a means of knowledge, which is a pramanam. Therefore, pramata, pramanam, prameyam, they all go together. Therefore, since the moment you have to say pramata, there should be an object also, prameyam also. Therefore, when the prameyam comes, when the object comes, then you acquire the status of pramata. So when I say I see the glass, I am the observer of the glass, the pramata, only when the glass is there. And when the glass is not there, I cannot say that I am the observer of the glass. The pramata status, it comes when the glass comes. It goes away when the glass goes away. Therefore, the pramata status is only an incidental status, right? While the swarupam, the intrinsic status of the pramata is what? What is the incidental status of the pramata? So there are two things I'm talking about. I am the observer of the glass. Okay, here is the glass. So when the glass is in the picture, I can call myself pramata. Why? Because there is a glass, pramayam. I'm using my eyes, pramanam, and therefore I am the pramata. When the glass is not there, what am I? All right, let me add one more. I pick up a mobile phone instead of the glass, right? I am still a pramata, right? I am pramata using my eyes to see the pramayam, which is the mobile phone. So my status as pramata is coming and going, but it's a relative status because in one case I am the state pramata in relation to the glass. In the other case, I am pramata in relation to the mobile phone. But when both the objects are not there, am I there?
Yes, I'm still there.
And
Pure
what
consciousness.
Not as pramata, but as the ever-existent
Chaitanya principle? Okay, so that is to be understood. Therefore, the pramata status is always an incidental status dependent upon the arrival and departure of the objects. But in and through all the individual pramata statuses, there is an intrinsic status which is consciousness, Chaitanya. And therefore, intrinsically, the Atma is Chaitanyam principle itself, pure Chaitanyam, intrinsic status. Whenever there is an object which becomes available, from the standpoint of view of that object, this Atma, intrinsically Chaitanyam Atma, it acquires the status of the knower, the pramata. So in the presence of a prameyam, an object, the Atma is pramata, but without the object, from the intrinsic viewpoint, Atma is not a pramata, it is not a subject. It is basically only the consciousness principle, which we call Brahman. And therefore, since there is no object, there is nothing to be experienced. And that is why we say Brahman or Atma is not something for you to experience, but it is for you to accept, to own up as yourself. So first, in all our transactions, we say, I am Pramata. Then you progress and you say, I am the consciousness principle. I am Brahman. Right? So, as I said in this earlier, that this particular Upanishad has two bhashyams, the Pada Bhashyam and the Vakya Bhashyam, both by Shankaracharya. So here Shankara adds here, after understanding the first chapter, after having studied the first chapter, what is the status of the student? He says this student, his intellect should have been turned away from Vidita and Avidita objects. Objects which are known, Vidita, and objects which are not known, Avidita. So he says, Vidita, Avidita abhyam shishyasya buddhim nivartaya. The intellect, shishyasya buddhi nivartaya, has to be turned away from Vidita and Avidita abhyam, from the known objects and the unknown objects. And if you have to turn it away from the objects which are known and unknown, which means what? From the universe itself, you are turning away the intellect. Then Where does it turn to? He says, turn it inwards and abide in the Atma. Okay. Now that's a very common phrase you'll hear. Let your intellect abide in the Atma, or you abide in the Atma. Now, what does that mean? It's only a sentence, right? Let your intellect abide in the Atma. What does that mean? That means Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi iti, he says. He says that means that you have to claim that I am Brahman. Abiding in the Atma is nothing but remembering the idea that I am Atma. So Tadeva Brahma Tvam Vidhi. That is what the Upanishad said in the beginning. You have to remember that Brahman I am. You have to claim that Atman I am. That constant claiming of my status as Atma, that is called residing in Atman. and of course, here Shankara in his commentary adds, it is Abhishekam. When you claim you are Brahman, it is a crowning ceremony. Why? You're claiming yourself as the Lord of the entire universe. When you do that, everything else is negated as mithya, including all the upasya devatas. So this was what is supposed to have been understood from the first chapter, that I myself am Brahman, and therefore there is no other devata in this universe whom I can worship. And that is why he said that whatever you worship, that is not Brahman. That which enables you to worship, which is you yourself, your own consciousness principle, that is Brahman. Okay, so that is the understanding from the first chapter. And now Shankara says, no, why does, because the first chapter understanding is basically all of Vedanta, that I am Brahman and there is nothing else in this universe. But then why second chapter? So Shankara says, the Acharya, the teacher, he wants to test the intellect of the student. He wants to test the understanding. And therefore, what does he do? Vichalayati. He shakes the understanding. Right? So first chapter is Shravanam. And by shaking the student's understanding, he is trying to ascertain, teacher is trying to ascertain how well the student has assimilated. So this is the Mananam part. And therefore now, teacher says, Aham Suveda iti manyase yadi. If you say that you know Brahman well, if you think so, the Brahma eva tvam vetaha. The Brahma means minimal or little or finite. So you know very little. You have not understood Brahman at all. You have not understood my teaching because Nunam Brahmano Rupam, you know very little of the real Swarupam, the real nature of Brahman. You only have understood that Brahman which is obtaining in humans in a form. So the Upadhi you have seen, you do not know the real Brahman. You have only seen that Brahman which is appearing as the Upadhi, and you have taken the Upadhi as Brahman because you are going to do worship. That is why you are saying, I know. I know means I know this Brahman as an object. In short, you have not understood. And therefore, mimamsam eva. You should do more mimamsa. You should inquire more. Therefore, Acharya is saying that if you think or if you say that you have understood Brahman, then really speaking, you have not understood at all. And therefore, you need to inquire. Right. So why does Shruti say this? Because once the Shruti has spoken, I mean, the Shruti words are Pramanam. He should have understood, right? So there is a Upanishad called Chandogya Upanishad, where the teacher is Lord Brahmaji himself, Hiranyagarbha himself. And there are only two students. One is Indra, Devaraja, and one is Asura Raja. Okay. So the same teaching is given. The Asura Raja, what is his conclusion? His conclusion is that the body is Brahman. And then he goes and starts teaching that in his Asura Loka. He doesn't come back. He understands the body is Brahman and he says, fine, great. And he goes and starts teaching. So this is the Asuric parampara called Dehatmavada. Also we think of it as Charvaka. Only the body is there. But Devaraja, that is Indra, he goes back and then he thinks there is something wrong. So keeps on coming back. While this Asura Loka fellow goes away, satisfied with the teaching, Indra does not. The idea conveyed is that there can be a doubt about the real teaching, even when the teaching comes from Lord Brahmaji himself. And therefore here, Acharya wants to take that doubt away. Therefore he says all these things, that if you really think you understood Brahman, you really haven't understood at all. Then comes the last words of the mantra, Manye Veditam. The student says, no, I know Brahman. Right? So there is, we use two words when we talk about Shastra. We say Paroksha Jnanam and Aparoksha Jnanam. So what is the translation of Aparoksha Jnanam? It's knowledge which is indirect, in the sense that when I say that I know this mobile phone, I know this mobile phone as an object, right? And therefore, I am the Pramata, the mobile phone is a Prameyam. Then we use the word Aparoksha Jnanam. Now, in many teachers and many texts, even from very good teachers, they, for the lack of a better word, they translate Aparoksha Jnanam as direct knowledge, right? And therefore, many students of Vedanta, they have this idea that first one has to get Paroksha Jnanam of Brahman. And they think that the Paroksha Jnanam is what? You are Brahman, Tattvamasi. That's Paroksha Jnanam. And then they say Aparoksha Jnanam is a direct experience. Direct knowledge they translate as direct experience, which means that after I know that I am Brahman, then I have to sit down in meditation or in Samadhi and experience that status of myself as Brahman. So that they think is Aparoksha Jnanam. Therefore, Vedanta teaching, according to them, is incomplete until it is followed by an experience of Brahman. Brahma Anubhava has to be there. So such an idea has a lot of complications, right? Because when you say direct experience, when you translate Aparoksha Jnanam as direct experience, then you have to ask the question, can Brahman be experienced as an object? And the straight answer is no. Because repeatedly you will see that all Shrutis, all Upanishads, they say, in fact, Bhagavad Gita itself started by the word Aprameyam. What does the word Aprameyam mean?
That which cannot be seen as an object, that which cannot be
An object
That
of
which is not
experience.
an object.
Hmm.
That which cannot be an object of a pramanam. That is aprameyam, right? Because remember, pramanam, pramata, prameyam. A pramata uses the pramanam to grasp a prameyam, right? I, the pramata, use my eyes to grasp the glass. I, the pramata, use my ears to grasp music. The prameyam is the object of the pramanam. The prameyam will vary depending upon the pramanam. And repeatedly, in fact, Gita started by saying Atma is aprameyam. It cannot be the object of any of the sense organs. And not only that, Upanishads say achintyam. It cannot be the object of the mind also. Agrahayam. It cannot be the object of any sense organs. Right? So, if you give the meaning of direct experience of Brahman to Aparoksha Jnanam, you are in direct violation of the entire Shruti structure. All Upanishads repeatedly say that Brahman cannot be an object at all, primarily because it is a subject, right? Okay. That is one. So somebody can say, fine, one very intelligent Purvapakshi, he'll stand up and say, all right, Brahman is always the subject of experience, right? And that is a very, very, subtle idea that is being conveyed, that any experience, Brahman is the subject. And therefore, the Purvapakshi can say that in Samadhi, it is fine. I am not saying that Brahman is going to be the object of that experience. Brahman will be the subject of Samadhi. And therefore, Samadhi is necessary. Because having understood Brahman as Paroksha Jnanam, as Aham Brahma Asmi, that is Paroksha Jnanam. When you sit in Samadhi, that Brahman will be experienced as the subject of that experience, not as the object, I am saying. And therefore, that is Aparoksha Jnanam. That is also a possible argument, right? It's a very subtle argument. How is it going to be understood by us? Or even if somebody comes up with this argument that Brahman will be the subject of a Samadhi experience or a meditational experience, therefore you should have it, then you have to say that I agree that Brahman is the subject of every experience. And the key here is every experience. Brahman cannot be presented as the subject of one particular experience. Brahman cannot be said to be subject of Samadhi. It is also subject of Samadhi. That is the correct understanding. That Brahman is not the subject of any one particular experience, but it is subject of every single experience. And since, it is subject of every single experience, every experience that you have is of Brahman alone. Therefore, you need not work for Brahman experience. Brahman Anubhava need not be worked for through a particular experience. Therefore, the argument that Brahman can be the subject of Samadhi and therefore you should do Samadhi is not a valid argument, because even brushing your teeth is Brahma Anubhava, just as Samadhi is also Brahma Anubhava. You have to sit down for Samadhi and spend some time there to work towards that. But every experience of yours, including getting up in the morning and putting your feet on the ground, including opening your eyelids in the morning, all that is Brahma Anubhava alone. Brahma experience alone. Therefore, Brahman experience, Brahma Anubhava, need not be something which I work for, because it is available to me in every experience of mine. And therefore, the translation of Aparoksha Jnanam as direct experience is best avoided, right? Aparoksha Jnanam is not a matter of experience. It's a matter of understanding, of cognition. That's the catch. The problem is what? That every experience that you have, what happens, is sit back and think. You run into a few people, they talk to you, some people praise you, some people curse you, all experiences. The normal way in which our intellect deals with all this is what? It processes all these experiences, right? Somebody said something, he praised me. Oh, he's such a good teacher. Somebody said you can't explain for nuts. And based on these kind of interactions, which are nothing but experiences, what happens? I come to a self-conclusion. I conclude something about myself. What is that? For example, I meet some of you guys in the ashram. Oh, you can say, oh, Ravi, you're such a great teacher, right? Or one of you says, no, I didn't like the way you teach. I have not understood. These are all experiences. These are all Brahman experiences, Brahma Anubhava. What is the normal way I will process this? I will come to a conclusion about myself. What is that? I am the person who has gone through the experiences. I am the pramata, right? Vedanta says that self-conclusion, that is the error. That self-conclusion, I am the experiencer of the experiences. I am the one who was told that I teach well. I am the one who was told that what I teach is not understandable. These are all conclusions. I am a good teacher, I am a bad teacher. These are the conclusions. And Vedanta says the experience itself is Brahma Anubhava. When somebody tells you that you are a great teacher, look at it as Brahma Anubhava. Don't look at it as something from which I have to conclude that I am a good teacher. Do you see the difference? The problem does not lie in any experience, because experiences are going to be there since you are Brahman, your consciousness principle itself. Everything is Brahma Anubhava for you. So there is no problem with the experience. Brahma Anubhava is going to happen. But there is a problem with conclusions. Do you see the difference?
Yes, Acharya, because the conclusion will add something to I am.
Conclusion is adding something to I am. Basically, you are. That is Brahman, right? Another example I can give you is when you get up in the morning, you see that the sun is moving upwards. And during the evening, you see the sun is going downwards. That is the experience. What is the conclusion?
The sun moves.
It doesn't
Sun rises and sun
rise
sets.
or set. Yeah,
That is
it
the
doesn't.
conclusion. The conclusion that sun rises and sets is wrong. The experience of seeing the sun rise and set is not wrong. But the conclusion, the wrong conclusion, is the result of your intellect incorrectly or erroneously processing the experience which you have had, right? The incorrect processing of any experience is due to the limitation of your pramanam only, right? And therefore, any conclusion which you get from an experience itself is Brahman alone. Remember, there is no problem with any experience. But any conclusion which you make is always made using the limited pramanam which you have, the Paurashaya pramanam, the worldly pramanams which you have. And those, because of the limitations of those worldly pramanams, those conclusions are wrong. And Vedanta says, I will give you a new pramanam, Shruti itself. The new pramanam will not, impinge, will not touch the experiences at all. It will not talk about the validity of the experiences. But it will help you to alter the processing capacity of your pramanams, available pramanams. You will not use the available pramanams to come at the conclusion, but you will revise the processing with the strength of the new pramanam. The very same set of experiences. Remember, experiences will not change. The very same set of experiences, you will revise the processing. You will reprocess. And therefore, the same experience by which you concluded that I am the teacher, that processing is revised with the help of the Vedanta Pramanam. And your new conclusion is what? I am not the Pramata, I am the Sakshi. When you say I am the Pramata, in the light of your worldly Pramanams, you had included the mind in yourself, in the definition of I. When you use Vedanta and you process that very same experience, you are excluding the mind from the definition of I, and then you are saying, I am the Sakshi. And this revision of the processing, this arriving at a new conclusion is not an experiential process. It is a cognitive process. And therefore, whenever I use the word paroksha, remember paroksha is used to indicate something which is away from me. The very word paroksha means not close to me, away from me. While the adjective paroksha, aparoksha, when you have to use it in exactly the opposite meaning. Paroksha is something away from me. Aparoksha means it is me, myself. It is about myself. And therefore, the word aparoksha jnanam should never be taken as direct experience, but it should be taken as the idea that I am Brahman, I am Atma alone, right? Remember, of course, that even when you say, I am a samsari, that is also aparoksha, of course. The conclusion that I am a samsari is aparoksha, because why? Because it is about you only. So, aparoksha it is definitely, but it is not aparoksha jnanam. It is aparoksha ajnanam. Okay. And therefore, if you have been processing incorrectly based on worldly pramanams, you have a particular mindset, which is what? I am a jiva. There is a jagat which is always bothering me. I live in that jagat, and therefore I need Ishvara, who is my protector. And therefore I have to worship him daily. This is the triangular format. Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. This comes from the incorrect processing of available experiences using worldly pramanam. And when I junk the worldly pramanam and the same experience, say when I say junk, I mean, I'm not saying you junk the eyes and the ears, because that is the very basis pramanam which gives you the experiences, right? I am saying the processing is not done on the basis of those pramanams. They still show you the world, but the processing is no longer done based on what they show me. The processing is done based on the independent pramanam, Vedanta. And the mindset based on that independent pramanam is a new mindset. It is the binary format. I am the Sakshi, I am Atma, and there is a world, the Anatma, which is dependent upon me for its existence. And therefore, I am Atma, and there is an Anatma which is not different from me. Very important conclusion. That Anatma is a dependent entity. And therefore, since that Anatma itself is dependent upon me, I don't require anybody to save me or to protect me. The entire purpose of Vedanta is to change my mindset from Jiva Jagadishvara to Atma Anatma mindset. And this revision of the mindset is called Nididhyasana. Right? Remember that a very important point over here. Everybody says do sadhana, do sadhana, do sadhana for moksha. Right? Now, when you say do sadhana for moksha, you are conveying a very wrong idea. What is that wrong idea?
That
Through sadhana, I will know Brahman.
whereas you are
And
already,
it's said,
that karma is required for moksha.
yeah,
That moksha is going to come
yes,
in time after you finish your sadhana. Right? So it becomes a sadhyam. A sadhyam is the object which is obtained through the sadhana. And therefore, by saying that, if the teacher tells you that you have to do sadhana for moksha, then the teacher is telling you that you are not free just now, but you will become free in time. And that's a very big problem, because moksha is not something which is available in time. If you are not free now, you will never be free. Moksha is siddha vastu, available right away, not later. Okay, so that is what this revised mindset means. I am Atma. I was Atma. I am Atma. I will be Atma. I don't require any sadhana to become Atma. In fact, the very junking of the idea that sadhana is required, that dropping the idea that I need a sadhana for moksha, that dropping is moksha. Okay. Then, I hope this idea is clear to everybody.
Yes, Acharya ji.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But I was wondering that this intellectual cognitions will still require the intellect to
Of course.
function.
The sadhaka, sadhana, everything is in vyavahara.
Right.
Vyavaharika only. In Vyavaharika, there is no avoiding duality. Right? You cannot open your eyes and not see the sunrise. That is going to be there. The idea is to process that experience differently and say the sun does not rise. Intellectually, you will continue to see what you have been seeing. You will continue to see a finite body. You will continue to see a body which has got a cough and a cold, an influenza, and afraid of COVID. But beyond that, you have to see yourself as that particular principle which is pervading everything. Okay, so moksha is not a sadhyam. It is not something to be gained. It is there. You are free at the moment. You are Brahman. And if you are not Brahman now, you are not going to become Brahman in future. Right? So you are Brahman as of now. You've always been Brahman. Okay. Now, Shankara's Bhashyam is important here. He raises a very pertinent point. He says, or rather, the Purva Pakshi gets up. A doubting Thomas gets up and says, when you say consciousness is the very nature, swarupam of Brahman, because that's what we say, right? We say Chit, Tat, Tat, Chit, Ananda is the very swarupam of Brahman. Swarupam means nature. Swarupam, intrinsic nature. So you say, yes, yes, Shruti says that. Then this doubting Thomas says, oh, but I got you, because Shruti also says Brahman is arupam, without any form, without any swarupam at all. So tell me, is consciousness the essential nature of Brahman or not? Right? Either Brahman has got a nature, in which case you cannot say arupam, or Brahman has got no nature. And if you say Brahman has got no nature, then how can you say that consciousness has got the essential nature of Brahman? So Shankara says, no, let's look at it properly. Supposing, okay, Shankara's answer I will give you first. What is Shankara's answer? Shankara's answer is that no, consciousness is not the nature of Brahman. So that is really shaking you guys up, right? All this time I thought Sat and Chit and Ananda are my very nature. Now Shankara says, no, they are not your nature at all. You are Brahman. You have no nature. So let's look at the arguments for that. If you say that consciousness is the essential nature of Brahman, what is the problem?
Again, we are giving it a quality or a
Attribute.
attribute that we are saying it is consciousness.
Okay, we said achintyam,
Mhm.
which cannot be described, right? So the moment you say consciousness is the essential nature of Brahman, Brahman becomes a definable entity. And therefore, Brahman becomes definable as Chaitanyam Brahman. Right? Now, the problem is that if Brahman is definable as Chaitanyam Brahman, then why should Upanishad say that Brahman is not definable? Remember, tatra chakshur gacchati, navag gacchati. The eyes cannot go there. The tongue cannot go there. Cannot be defined in any manner. And Shruti says again and again that Brahman cannot be defined. Shankara says, my dear sir, who is defining? You, the Jiva, or Brahman? Who's defining Brahman?
The Jiva,
The Jiva. Where is Jiva? Paramarthika or Vyavaharika?
Vyavaharika.
Transactional, yeah.
And therefore, whenever you say attribute any words like consciousness, existence, bliss, etc. to Brahman as its essential nature, remember that every such description is from Vyavaharika Drishti only. And then when Shruti says Brahman is undefinable, Shruti says from Paramarthika Drishti, Brahman cannot be defined. So consciousness can be said to be the essential nature of Brahman only from Vyavaharika Drishti. From Paramarthika Drishti, no such statement can be made. So that is the first argument. Then there's another interesting argument. Supposing you say that consciousness is essential nature of Brahman, and of course we also say that the Bhuta Bhautika Prapancha, the world, is inert in nature. Right? Two statements we have seen throughout our study. What is that? Brahman is consciousness, the world is inert. Do you see any problem with that two statements at this stage?
Duality,
Duality.
Atma and Atma.
You have to conclude that Jada Prapancha, the inert universe, is different from Brahman. Why do you have to say that? Because you have just said essential nature of Brahman is consciousness, and essential nature of Jagat, the universe, is Jadam, inertness. And therefore, obviously, world is different from Brahman. Right? Therefore, there are two things in this universe. One is consciousness, Brahman, and one is Jada Prapancha. That is Dvaitam. And if you remember the ways, the different definitions of Veda which we had, there are definitions of differences. So one is Vijatiya Vedaha. What is Vijatiya Vedaha?
Sir, we did Swajatiya and Vijatiya Veda.
Yes.
One like,
What
say
is
we take an
Vijatiya Veda?
object, like difference between a tree and a plant, and then types of trees. So that kind of differentiation. Swajati is from the same variety or the same
Okay,
group.
so we can simply say that Vijatiya means the difference appearing because there are two different species. And here, obviously, there are two species. One is consciousness species, which is Brahman, and one is inert species, which is the universe. And therefore, you are saying there is a Vijatiya Bheda between Brahman and Jagat. Therefore, Brahman cannot be Ananta anymore. Why can Brahman not be infinite anymore? Because there is another species which has a boundary of its own. Any species with an independent boundary will limit the other species, obviously. And therefore, by saying that this Jada universe is different from Brahman, you are saying that Brahman is limited because there is Brahman and there is Jagat. And therefore, Brahman is no longer consciousness principle, which is infinite. It's a finite consciousness principle. Right? Therefore, that is the second argument. Therefore, you can say that the Bheda exists, but the Bheda is because of two different levels of reality. Brahman is Paramarthika Satyam, and Jada universe, the universe is Vyavaharika Satyam. Therefore, Chaitanyam, consciousness, is Swarupam of Brahman from Vyavaharika Drishti. But from Paramarthika Drishti, you have to amend the statement. You have to say Brahman is the Adhishthanam, the substratum of consciousness as well as inertness. Brahman is the substratum of consciousness as well as inertness, which is another way of saying that both consciousness and inertness are adhyasa upon Brahman, superimpositions upon Brahman. From the Paramarthika angle, Brahman is Chaitanya Jadatva Vilakshanam. It is different from consciousness, it is different from inertness, but it is that substratum upon both of these attributes, the consciousness of Vyavaharika Brahman and the inertness of Vyavaharika Jagat. They are both superimpositions, they are both adhyasa. Lot of new inputs. Any reactions?
Acharya ji, but we will always need words to explain, otherwise
You will always need words to explain. We are nothing which I am saying is decrying that. I am saying, yeah, that's correct.
so that will always be in the transactional.
Every
level.
definition of yours is in transactional reality only. Whenever Upanishad says Brahman is Chaitanyam, it is Vyavaharika Drishti only. In Paramarthika Drishti, Brahman is not definable at all because it is not available. For us, for the Jiva, Paramarthika is not available. Only the Vyavaharika Prapancha is available. And that Paramarthika Brahman is available in Vyavaharika as the consciousness principle, where in the mind. You get it?
Yeah.
The mind is so important because that Paramarthika Brahman, which is beyond consciousness and inertness, that manifestation of that Paramarthika Brahman takes place in the Vyavaharika reality in the presence of your mind. Right? Supposing there is a creation where nobody has any mind, will there be a manifestation of Brahman?
No, because there'll be nothing to reflect that.
Correct. I am not saying, very carefully note, I am not saying that in a creation where minds are absent, Brahman is absent. Brahman is very much present because Brahman is sarvavyapi. What is absent is the manifestation of Brahman, because the reflecting medium is not there. Right?
Yes.
So this sort of clear understanding is very important. Therefore, whenever you say consciousness, Brahman is consciousness, it is a conditional definition of Brahman. What is that condition?
Presence of reflecting medium.
Presence of the reflecting medium, the mind. So wherever I say Brahman is consciousness principle only, there is a condition there that mind is there. And because mind is there, the consciousness principle is being reflected in the mind. And therefore, wherever the mind is present, Brahman is available as consciousness. And not only that, the problem here is that wherever Brahman is available in the mind as consciousness, that Brahman seems to imitate the mind, the body-mind sense complex. So it's called anukari, imitation. And for there, Brahman seems to take on the attributes of the body-mind sense complex. That limitless, infinite Brahman, which is available in the mind, seems to experience itself as limited by the size of the body and the mind. So when body travels, Brahman seems to travel. When body has problems, Brahman seems to have problems. These are the ideas which are being conveyed here.
Om, sir.
Hmm.
Then in Paramarthika, there is only silence.
Paramarthika is only Brahman.
Hmm.
Don't try to figure out what is there.
No words, no nothing.
Words require what?
Hmm. Mind.
Is
And
mind
becomes
available?
Vyavaharika
Mind
and
is
a
there in
Pramana.
Vyavaharika.
Hmm.
This idea
Yes.
is to be very carefully assimilated.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay. So I will leave you with this thought for the week.
Acharya ji.
Yeah, John.
So how can something in the Paramarthika level manifest when something is in the Vyavaharika level, when these two things are different levels of reality? How can this Paramarthika Brahman be manifested in the mind as consciousness?
In the same way that the gold manifests as a necklace, there are two different levels of reality. One is Satyam, one is Mithya. One is Paramarthika. The gold is Paramarthika. The necklace is Vyavaharika. There is no Vyavaharika without Paramarthika. Remember that. And therefore, Brahman is available. It is available in Vyavaharika, but manifests only in the presence of the mind. It manifests as existence in everything that exists in Vyavaharika, but it manifests as consciousness only in the presence of your mind. And right now, since we're talking about the consciousness aspect, we are focusing more on the mind.
Thank you. Need more manana.
Please
So
do some what you call mananam on this. Yes, yes, Ritu.
So it's like the film being seen on a screen. The screen is always there, but the film is manifest only because of the screen.
Well, you can put it that way, yes. But the reflecting example is a better example. The light is always there, but when there's a reflecting medium, then only the light is seen.
Yes.
The screen limits it, but the light is all pervading. It
Light
doesn't
is all
limit.
pervading. Yes.
Very profound. Mhm.
Yes, as you go through the Upanishads, you'll find that you have more and more to think about during the week. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah
Om Tat
Shivaya.
Sat.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
patience. Om Om.
Thank you.